Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a Ukraine war. I don't know what it is. It's going to be talking about military aid a bit later. But first of all, this is a co-stream with Greg Terry from the Greg Terry Experience, who is presently out in Ukraine. You can see it's very dark there. Greg, can you, maybe you can't tell us where you are. We were just talking in the green room about things that are happening around Ukraine. What's your take on some pretty difficult news that the Ukrainians are dealing with?
Well, greetings everyone from Frontlines of Ukraine, and thank you for all of your support. I know that there are people equally because we're, physically co-streaming this. So hello to all my guys, hello to Johnny's guys, and the beautiful thing is we are all on the same team. So right now, and this is Sunday evening, it's 6:41 p.m. in Ukraine. We are completely live. We just finished an aid drop. Very successful, and you guys will be seeing that on my channel later. But
what type of aid? Sorry, before you get in, I'd just be interested if you can
we
say.
just supplied the Frontline canine mine sniffing dogs.
Right. So you obviously didn't supply the dogs.
We have supplied the canines this evening with food, with products they need, protection equipment,
Brilliant.
vitamin complex. I mean, everything. So we received the request. A lot of people on my channel have been donating and saying, okay, help the canines. So today we help the canines. We've purchased the things and we have delivered them, and it's really, really good. In fact, Jania is out of the truck right now, still talking to the canine unit. I mean, this is happening right now. So that tells you where we're at. But here in Ukraine, the resolve is good. But and we've come through the 2-year anniversary, and there was, you know, um, remembrance events in Kyiv. There was rallies in Kyiv as well as around the world in many different places. All of that's happening and good, and we're thankful for all of that. But the reality here is, physically here in Ukraine, it's quite a challenge right now on the war front. We are losing ground. Um, and the Ukrainian soldiers are not despondent. They're not hopeless. But I think a better word to describe it, and I've been with them all day, is frustrated.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, my thoughts are this is a swing in a war that you would expect. Like, I think I said this exactly to you before, Greg. This was what I was expecting when the Russians pushed last time, and it never happened. For whatever reason, Ukrainians did a good job of defending, or they're more prepared, or the Russians were less prepared. And the last major Russian or supposed Russian counteroffensive resulted in no meaningful pushes, apart from, you could argue, Bakhmut, and that was always on the cards, and that was pretty disastrous for the Ukrainians, although difficult for the Russians, although difficult for the Ukrainians. Now we're in a position where I think a lack of ammunition fundamentally has allowed Russia to push forward in a way that they wouldn't have been able to if Ukraine had everything they were expecting to have, put together with a lack of fortification building that you've got some things to talk about with regard to, which I think had led the Ukrainians to be in a bad situation, bad position to be able to defend Russia from a Russian attack. Is that about fair?
As always, Johnny, spot on. If we think about, the most memorable place right now, it's Avdiivka that we've lost, and we've actually lost a little bit more than we needed to, not just due to equipment and lack of supply or stuff, as Johnny likes to call it, but the defensive lines were not prepared. So on that first line, that on a retreat that you would have went to and held that line, there was no line there, and they were trying to frantically dig little lines. They were 30 centimeters deep, and we knew that the next lines were back 3 to 4 kilometers, real lines, and unfortunately Russia's been able to gobble that up pretty quick. So we're pushing in now to that line of villages, and it's a challenge. You've got a really, it's pretty good push right there. Yeah.
This map is out of date. I haven't dated it today, and JR hasn't.
Yeah.
So we've been unable to do it. But they have pushed further along here, and they are
Yes,
pushing
they have.
towards the Badici, Semenivka, Orlivka, Tonyenka. So this is, I mean, it's
Today,
interesting.
when we were doing the analysis on this and we were talking to some different guys, here's the problem with this place right here. Um, so if you look basically due west, the large city you come to eventually is Pokrovsk. And between there and Pokrovsk, it's going to be right in there, yes. Between there and Pokrovsk, there's there's not much fortification. There's some little villages and little towns, but you're it's wide open fields, as you know, Johnny, and tree
Yeah.
lines and creek bottoms, and it's I'm not sure how well Ukrainians are entrenched there. I don't know, but
It's interesting. When I was coming out of Kherson with you
mhm.
recently, we saw some major fortifications being built and that surprised me because that was nowhere that I thought was particularly vulnerable. But on the other side of things, that's probably good that it shows that the Ukrainians are putting some thought into contingency plans and what if the Russians broke across the river. And the same up in some of these northern areas, the
Mhm.
Ukrainians are building Dragon's Teeth and tank ditches and trenches as well, which is a good sign. What do you have to say about that?
Well, Johnny, you witnessed it with your own hands. I mean, your own eyes there.
Mm,
What is happening in Kherson, and I can tell you that they continue to build there and fortify. And like you said, it's good. They're preparing for something. You know, we don't take that as a completely negative sign. That they're expecting to have to use those and that, but additionally, those things are being built also up north, as you said, in different
mm.
places, very north. And we're talking some serious fortifications. Of course, today we've had, was it today, Jania, the lady from the Rada talking, or yesterday about Kharkiv?
Today, seems to me today.
Today. So we've had a Rada member come out and say very clearly that due to the lack of supply and due to what we're facing now, if some of these towns like Kupiansk and Liman fall, I mean, she point blank called it. They're coming for Kharkiv, and it's going to be difficult for us to defend Kharkiv. So, and then there were Ukrainians who started ripping on her and saying, you know what, you shouldn't be saying that because you're going to put fear into the people, and we already have enough fear. So we get back to that balance that is it air alarm? We get back to that balance that if we don't find the balance of telling the truth but at the same time keeping up hope, it creates a critical problem for Ukraine. And you were seeing that map there just a second ago.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah. This.
yeah, we're under air alarm. Okay, that's what I thought. Russia's very, the border, Johnny, you've been these places. The border's right there.
Yeah.
And nobody's really thinking about all of that, but artillery's up there. As you learned when you were just here recently, they've rolled in artillery divisions. And, it's not enough troops amassed there to make any ground push, but man, they can tear that place up in a heartbeat. So it's just a challenge. And I know Ukraine's trying to do their best to play the balance game, to not so panic, but at the same time, the Ukrainians really need to know that, especially those in central, and we were talking about this today with guys all along the front area, that we've come to the point where I'm just listening to the air alarms. The
Mm.
Ukrainians in central and western Ukraine, although supporting the military, supporting the army, um, sometimes it's almost as if they're, I don't use the word oblivious, but maybe desensitized to the war, numb to the war, do not want to hear about it anymore. But when you pass that 100-kilometer mark, as you well know now, Johnny, you start coming in close to the front lines, it's almost like a different country. And it's right
Yeah.
now we need to really focus on bringing not only the world together, and I don't want this to have a negative connotation for people, but to keep the Ukrainians together because they need the balance of reality and the balance of hope.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. We talked about when I was out there with you and subsequently about how almost, I mean, you don't want this to happen, but if something terrible happened within Ukraine, like some really big disaster, it might then reawaken Ukrainians to going, right, okay, remind them they're in a war, people who are further to the east, now west, sorry. Now, of course, you don't want that to happen, but there needs to be some kind of it's a desperate situation where the whole country needs to be unified in this idea and feeling that they're in a war. And I remember going, even to Mykolaiv, which is not far from Kherson, and feeling, oh, this is a different city. We went and sat in a beautiful coffee house that was really kitsch. It was lovely. It was partly a coffee museum as well, and we had this like wonderful experience speaking to some military guys who knew what was going on. But the sense from the city was like, even though Mykolaiv does get hit and is given a lot of attention by the Russians, it felt very different from the experience in Kramatorsk, very different from the experience in Kherson. Yeah,
and that's the problem. There's a Ukrainian guy sitting right beside me that would say the same thing. The country at war, there are heroes on the front line rolling like crazy, doing amazing things with the resources they have, but we really need the country to come together. I say it this way. I'm convinced, and much better than I do with your geopolitical knowledge, but at the minimum, Russia is on a pretty solid war economy right now. And as well as I do, um, I'm looking at some news coming out right now about Kupiansk. It's having some troubles right now. I mean, literally the second James just showed it to me. But
yeah.
that Russian machine is on a war economy, and you can say what you want to. They're manufacturing stuff, they're doing stuff, and Ukraine is as well, but
Yeah.
definitely not to the degree. And of course, as we know, supply is very limited.
Yeah, and that's the issue we talked about so many times about how, with mobilization, if you get to a full war economy and mobilize fully, then you basically destroy your economy. But then you kind of artificially inflate your economy by producing stuff that's only for war. But then that takes away from everything else, and you become a one-track economy, and that there are issues to go along with that. So at the moment, it's not going to be pleasant living in Russia, particularly as it moves more and more into a wartime economy. And people might want to run away and get worried about mobilization. And so, you've got to take the rough with the smooth, and it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. And that's the issue that Ukraine is facing. Brian asks, any more word on mobilization on the streets? What are you hearing about mobilization?
Well, let me tell you about mobilization. Any more word on mobilization? Well, you know what? Let's talk to a Ukrainian. What's your latest you're hearing on mobilization?
Let's say we need to make it more straight. This is my thought. We need mobilization, no question, and we need to make it properly. I mean, and not to delay it, because our guys, it's not enough guys there. That's
So Zhenya, your thought, and hi mate, good to see you again. Your thoughts are that we definitely need to properly or Ukrainians definitely need to go full on, do a full mobilization, and punch through the pain that will cause.
it's needed for many reasons. For at first the front line, and there is only way to hold what we have and have results there. It's a mobilization. There is a need in that. Plus, the country will become more united if the whole country will be in one system, experiencing the same with no exception.
That's a really good point. So it's almost that, this is horrible for our economy, for our society, and for our culture to go through a full national mobilization. But we're all in it together, and therefore we will all unite together, and there will be a common feeling of everyone is doing their part together for the war. That's interesting.
It's needed. It's needed for every family. It's needed for every region. It's needed for people with experiencing in every in any place of Ukraine the same. I
Mm.
mean the same.
Mm.
I hope it's not. I hope like we will not lose so many, but we will. Sorry, with that situation we have, everybody needs to pay a price.
Mm.
If
Yeah.
it would be like 10 cars, 20, 100 cars, like trucks like ours, bringing needed help, it would be much more, and there is much more people who can help, much
Yeah.
more organization and businesses who can help. And I believe this is just a need. It should be, it must be like that.
Interesting. Well, thanks, Zhenya. I mean, any news about? Someone's asked: do our troops, or do the Ukrainian troops on the front line get news about the shooting down of Russian AWACS and other aircraft? Do they hear about the good news or news in general, or are they just in their frontline bubble? I don't even know the answer
No,
to
no,
that. And
they get the news. They
Yes.
know what's going on, and
yeah.
it helps them, inspires them. Who shot down the plane?
This my video this morning went into like the end result is don't really know because the
There you
Ukrainians are
go.
claiming.
It doesn't matter. It went down. Good
Yeah,
answer.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like the
Let me
Ukrainians are
do
claiming it,
something.
the Russians claiming it. It
Let me
happened.
do something real quick since we're
Yeah,
co-streaming.
yeah.
How bad was Khmelnytsky hit last night from Ricochet? I'll get that
I meant to
information
ask
to.
that. I did mean to ask that.
Oh,
Sorry, have no update.
we'll check and we'll let you
Yeah.
know. We're nowhere near Khmelnytsky.
Mm,
We're somewhere near the South Panama Beach, Florida coast.
lovely.
Um,
I can see.
Let me hit a couple of these real quick. Looks like a bunch of hot air regarding Transnistria. We shall see. We shall
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. Don't know. It could be.
I
Could go.
I
That's a 50-50 as far as I'm concerned. But
I
yeah.
have a okay. So if anything does unfold from Transnistria, that's going to have been planned for years and years and years. I've been there. Zhenya and I've been there. We've been all through Moldova 10 times. We know Moldova pretty well. And could Moldova go a little goofy, or the Transnistria region go a little goofy? Could there be an appeal? There could be. But if it is, it's going to be planned for years from Vladimir Putin. I'm just telling you. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens there. Um, Let me do a couple
By
more
the
here.
way,
All of
SM Wolf. This is for
Mhm.
you, SM Wolf. This is one of yours. Greg JP, thank you for all you do. Please give Pete a hug when you see him again. Love to all brave soldiers and my 3 kids, and I in Cape May, New Jersey. Slava Ukraini.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I did, and I will see Pete again here in the very near future, and I will again. Thank you. I've given him hugs and kisses and everything, and thank you guys.
His video went viral. If you haven't seen it, like it's so weird seeing Pete. I've met Pete, and we sat
Mhm.
in a restaurant together, and there he is being shared by all these different platforms, giving that rant he gave about the West giving help, not giving
Yeah,
help.
and what was interesting is that video. I was the first person to see it because Pete and I've become really close now. And Pete sent it to me, and he says, "Greg, my admin team is not wanting to post this, and I just feel sorry, Johnny, but I feel from God I should. Of course, you feel from intergalactic
Yeah,
moonbeams that you should, and 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 he sent it to me, and I'm not going to be the biggest f-bomb guy and any of that stuff, but he says, man, it's raw, and
yeah.
I said, Pete, in this situation, what's not wrong with telling the truth? Because in
Mm.
reality, you are, and that's going to take me to something else here in a moment from Czech, a
Can I
comment.
just say this is
Yeah,
from
do your
Pete?
thing.
Actually, this is my little shot glass that Pete gave me. That is actually a grenade canister, an empty. I'm not sure I should drink any shots out of that without. I don't know. It looks, but
I,
anyway, thank you to him for giving me that.
I need to give a big shout out to Paul Kiss from Greenville, PA. He is a massive supporter of Ukraine. He's a Canadian, Pennsylvanian. Now, SM Wolf with $10 super chat. Thank you. He's getting the hug. Hey, Greg, Blue Wolf CZ, check. Since you're in contact with Pete, let him know about the misinformed 800,000 shells that one small country is trying to provide for Ukraine. I left comment under that stream. Yes, actually, we talked about that today with some other people, and the understanding was given, and how that Czech's really trying to do a good thing, but they're needing some help. In fact, the people we were talking with, and Johnny, you probably know more about this than I do right now because we're running nonstop, and you know how it is when we run.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm going to be talking a little bit about this later
okay,
afterwards. But yeah, carry
what
on.
they were sharing with us is, France right now is giving a couple of issues. So I don't know any details about that, but the people we were talking with are in the know. So
The France issues are that they want the EU centralized EU money to be spent within the EU, so that if they're going to buy shells, those shells need to come from within the EU, so the money doesn't go out, and that money multiplies within the EU, which is a bona fide, like, in from an economic point of view. If you're considering nothing else, then yeah, absolutely. But then other countries are saying, but we don't have time to build up from and spend within the EU, so we need to spend outside in this emergency. And France did change their mind, then they've gone back, and then you've got Greece and Cyprus also saying no, because the EU was suggesting, or at least the Czechia, some of this is going to come from Turkey, and Greece and Cyprus don't like Turkey, so they don't want to buy from Turkey. So I think the situation now is people can do bilaterally what they want. So if Denmark, for example, are giving some of their own, what they've got left, but I think they're also giving money towards the Czechia lot, and wherever Czechia are getting it from, at least some of it I think is coming from Turkey, some of it coming from South Africa is one of the places I've heard as well. So then individual countries can then say, right, okay, we're going to help with that and chip in towards that. So Canada's given 30 million Canadian dollars towards that, but it doesn't afford an awful lot. Everyone chips in, then things will happen. The latest is that Europe has said 170,000 rounds will get to Ukraine by the end of March. So that is good news. They really need like 200,000 rounds a month, but 170,000 is Europe helping out somewhat, but little too late.
Okay, so all of that lines up. I want to finish with Blue Wolf because I respect this person, and Pete's not unjustly upset at Czech. Pete's upset at watching his guys die every day because they do not have the ability to defend themselves. And he's lost his mind. This man is there pulling wounded and dead soldiers off the field every day. So it's a challenge for him. Paul Gilbert, thank you for that donation of memberships, and
also IBAG-M as well has gifted 5
IBAG-M,
memberships to you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I've caught up now. So thank you for that. So I was going to tell you something else in regard to that. You just said that by the end of March, like 170,000 shells.
That is the latest I've heard today.
Okay.
Yes.
Today we were talking with people, and real people, not fake people.
Yeah.
Here, if we have that kind of delay, we're going to be fighting a completely different line in the war.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to say they're unstoppable right now, but they're moving, and it's basically unstoppable because there's nothing our guys can do. Nothing.
It is. I mean, artillery ammunition, particularly, is what I mean. I've been saying this the last few days. Like, it is. You can do a few things with drones, like you can blow up a few vehicles here and there, and maybe harass people in trenches. But in terms of like stopping an army that's really intent on moving forward, the only way you do that is with aviation bombs, which you can't use because of contested airspace, and artillery, like a lot of artillery, like not just the odd drone hitting a few bit, like a barrage after barrage after barrage of lead flying through the sky and hammering the opposing forces. And that's what Ukraine was able to do to some extent. And that's why the Russians didn't succeed in their previous counteroffensive. And it's why they're succeeding now, because they don't have that.
We, 3Dom Energy, yes, got the PayPal. We were able to talk to some guys and get some information from a specific commander today. And this information's accurate, 100%. With the lack of artillery, with the lack of shells, for example, Today, on the frontline areas, the Ukrainian tanks are riding around with 2 shells in them. Not 10,
That's
not 20,
interesting because I didn't think it was a problem with tank shells as well. I thought it was.
2. And I
Hmm.
trust. I
Yeah.
promise you, I trust.
No,
You know,
absolutely. There's just several questions there because I'd heard that there is more artillery than tank, but also I wonder if there's a difference between Soviet tank shells and NATO tank shells, and
that's correct.
I wonder whether they need more NATO tank shells. My guess would be, if I was a guessing
NATO.
man, they've probably got more Soviet tank shells. So the old T-64s are probably slightly more kitted out,
Yes,
but
sir.
the NATO tank shells, they're probably going
Yes, sir. That's correct. Now, secondly, so when you hear like Ukrainian soldiers, or if you look on Facebook or social media, Twitter, and you see these messages that get shared, and typically a lot of them are where Ukrainian soldiers are requesting night vision or
yeah.
optics. Okay, all of this plays together, and the reason it plays together is because they have such a lack of artillery, such a lack of being able to facilitate drone coverage, that they really need the ability to see the enemy before the enemy sees them, and that's
Yep.
the only way that they can stop the advancement.
Yep.
And when they're struggling to see at night, when they're struggling for equal drone activity and struggling with the inability to cover their positions with artillery, you have a magic mixture of a mess. And that's where we're at right now.
The way I understand it, and I could be wrong, but my interpretation is that I get the sense that Ukraine's probably got a general drone production and procurement advantage, but they have a disadvantage in thermal optics and drones. So I hear from different sources that night vision Russians are having an advantage with night vision drones. And of course, if you're doing a lot of your activity at night, if you're moving most of your forces at night because it's safer, then he who has the advantage with night vision drones has quite a significant advantage, and that would be a challenge for the Ukrainians for sure.
Well, we took you to a position where you were able to talk with some guys and you heard from them straight away. So your observations there are very accurate.
So is there any, with you guys or us as a larger community, helping to provide drones to the front line? I guess they're more reconnaissance drones that we're
Absolutely.
providing.
Eyes in the sky.
But can you, or are you able to, or are you going to provide drones with thermal imaging ability?
We're
Is that
working
doable?
on all of that right now. We have a meeting coming up here in a few days, and we have things with us now to help in that regard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
on that project that all of our communities have worked together on,
yeah.
We've asked everybody to be patient, and you're going to see the fruit of your giving and the fruit of your care very, very soon. And yes, all of the above. I can't talk too much about that directly due to my connection to nonprofits in the U.S. Because
Agreed.
I can get in trouble. But the reality is we've got a lot of things rolling, and there's a lot of things even in this truck to help right now.
Awesome source.
Yes, sir.
Right answer. I'll read between many lines and just feel marginally good. Marginally
The
better
eyes in the
about life.
sky are rolling.
Right, good stuff. All flying,
Yeah.
indeed. So, and do you know what, mate? If I could walk well and speak Ukrainian and speak Russian and had beefed up a little bit, I would be out there helping you now. But
Beefed up, Johnny. You are a monstrosity of mass. I mean, when you fell down in the snow above his Zoom, you about knocked me down the mountain. You're just a beast, Johnny, a beast.
I love this alternate reality.
The dog's bollocks is what you
Yeah,
are, mate.
damn straight, my friend. So thank you to Mr. Lion Dust. Good to see you too. Got home just in time, and that you did. So thank you for that. Thank you to Lawrence 22. for the super sticker. That's really very kind. And just a couple more here for the time being. Dutchy for the super sticker. That's exceptionally kind as well. And Brian Ivy, who's already asked you a good question. Thank you, Brian, for your continued support. Really do appreciate that. Now, I don't know that you can. I wonder whether you can talk cryptically, Greg,
I can
about
talk cryptically.
who you have met, not exactly who you've met, but you have met some important people recently who were,
Yeah, Blue Wolf,
who were,
Blue Wolf CZ. Let me just finish that conversation.
yeah.
You're very welcome, and thank you for the super chat. Okay, I'm ready.
Just, I don't know, like, you've met some important people recently who were maybe in places they shouldn't have been, and that's probably all you need to know. But like, what were important people trying to find out?
We were honored today to meet with important people who have important jobs, and I have to be cryptic
Yeah,
because I'm not allowed to not be. But these people are very high level from other nations, and they are responsible, and they're such an ally of Ukraine, and they care about Ukraine so much that they are taking the risk to do their own summary. They're not trusting the information that they are receiving or getting. And so they actually have a trip underway where they're just taking a look for themselves to see how best their nation can help Ukraine. And it was an honor to sit with these people today.
and it's great. So, how are things going on the front line? Let's speak to people near the front lines, at least. Let's speak to people who are experiencing all aspects of this war, to give ourselves like primary source information that we can then take back, and then hopefully that factors into better decision making on behalf of an ally. So that was interesting, and thank you for sharing
Well,
that.
you're very welcome, and you've been here with us. You know what we do, and you know the connections. And when we say that that's what's happening, that's what's happening. And for us, it was a big honor. And it's just one of those things that happens, Johnny. We were in the right
Yeah.
place at the right time, and the right meeting got established, and boom, we're there.
Yeah, and if people want to continue to help the charitable cause, please go to the description on my video, no doubt Greg's as well. I've got all sorts of links in the description underneath this, but you will find donate, and it'll be something like BLWC.
Yeah, or it goes right to my website, gregterry.org/donate. And from there, you have two options. It's either through our nonprofit through PayPal. A lot of people prefer that, or directly through our nonprofit on a direct giving link.
Yeah, so please continue to help out, guys. Greg's audience doesn't need to hear this; they know very well. But my audience, please continue to help out. It just does go straight to where it's needed and gets stuff that is requested. So
yeah, and really, we're focused right now for about the next 10 days to just shock the world. And I mean that in a very positive connotation for all of us together that have donated, on how much we're able to help. I can tell you, upcoming over the next week or so, we're going to be outfitting the battalion that we adopted together with all these communities. Am I allowed to say them?
I don't know.
We already said it before. Am I allowed or no?
Let's check it.
Okay. A battalion that we adopted, and a battalion we adopted. And see SM Wolf screaming for night vision. Exactly. They all are. So, but plus we have some more that it's everywhere. So the goal right now is, it took us this long to get everything into place to make these massive drops. So we're fully loaded right now and dropping. And then as we drop, okay, this is going to sound funny, but as we drop shipments then show up along our route in various places, and we reload and we drop again, and another drop shipment, and we
So
reload.
Nova Posture delivers out to a number of different places that are fairly close to the front line, and you can then drive with your vehicle rather than go all the way back to Khmelnytsky and then back
You
all
got
the way
it.
back. You can just go all along the front line in a kind of zigzag to be able to get the stuff from your drop points closer to the front line.
And think about the administration that is requiring. because Zhenya and the guys in our team, they have to organize which unit is at which position at which time. How long are we going to be required to be in this location to drop that material, to get to the next place, to reload the material, and then we have to meet these people. This is why we only deliver hand to hand, and this is why we go extremely close to the guys, because we can't be pulling them off of their positions or risking their lives to help them, nor do we want to risk ours. So everything is calculated to the nth degree, and sometimes we get caught up, we get hung up, and we have to spend. I mean, we've been hung up in Zaporizhia for 5 days sometimes delivering aid because we had other things going on, couldn't click out, and that's just the flexibility you have. So when I come here for 70 to 90 days at a time, it takes that long to do all of this. Now,
How much longer have you got out there?
I'll be here until April.
Right, cool.
Hey, that's plenty of time for you to come back, Johnny, and all of your fierce muscleness. Welcome.
I'd love to.
Now,
I'd love
now
to.
I want to say this, and I just want to ask people, because we're really getting connected now with some different groups here in Ukraine and around the world that are significant, and they're like, okay, dude, I don't know who you are and where you came from, but you're doing what we all want to do. I said, yes, we are. So why don't you help me share it so that others, we've got the operation in place. Help us spread the word. Help us spread the word. Tell people, go subscribe to Greg's channel. And because the more we can spread that base out, if we have 1,000 people giving $10 versus 10,000 people giving $10, we're making a massive difference. So guys, I'm very serious on this. You hear it on every YouTube video, but please tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell Uncle Johnny at the dinner table, and that's not you, Johnny. But
you can tell me too.
Tell Uncle Dave, and spread it, because it's so important, and people want to see that their donations and their care is not going into a black hole of the abyss of corruption or some huge organization that is sitting on it and not delivering it. We have the infrastructure in place, as you know, Johnny. We took you into Kherson and you didn't even have to show your passport, brother. We've got the infrastructure in place, and you can't get into Kherson. So you did. So
it's a shame. I wanted
us.
it stamped with a Kherson stamp, but it didn't happen.
And it's not bragging. It's just the reality of all these years of labor, and now people are starting to recognize it. So help us, because right now the goal: drop this massive amount of aid and let the world see it. Let our community members, and that's all of us, you, Prof. Gertis, Rick, myself, and others that have jumped on board, see it. And then I'm just going to say this right now. I received a message from our administrator there in the U.S., Pastor Kent, there at our home base, and he says, Greg, a man just reached out to me, and he's watching you, and and he says he has been looking because he has such a passion to help the Ukrainian people, and this guy wants to do something off the charts. I'm talking mega.
This
Okay.
reminds me of that, because I was talking to you, sorry to interrupt, but I was talking to you about needing to get corporates on board, and you talked about a lawyer before, and I was like, that's amazing.
Lawyers on board, but this is crazy, but doable. And if we can validate to the world, which we've done a good job of, we communicate every day, all of us working together, they don't see us fighting. We're all on the same team. And then we can really drop this stuff and then come back and say, okay, guys, let's try this. And I'd rather try and fail than fail to try. Okay. And I'm talking about something that all of us would sit back and go, my goodness, we're saving a lot of people's lives.
Brilliant. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm super excited. with that infectious positivity you've exuded there. A number of people have asked me from a UK point of view. I know you do this from a US point of view, and I don't know if you have the wherewithal, the desire, or whether it's even worthwhile. But a number of people have asked me about registering charitably in the UK, where that's doable in order to. So in the UK, we have something called gift aid, and if you give something, then the UK government gives an extra like 20% or something. You know, there are things in the UK that would mean it's beneficial to be registered for UK people to donate, but I don't know if that's worth your while or it's something.
Well, I'm wide open to that, and our bigger organization, we already have nonprofits in UK, 100%.
That would be amazing if you could do some kind of like
giving me
even a PayPal or some kind of
I'm sorry, but interrupt you. You're giving me information that I'm not really aware of. So, like I said, I'd rather try and fail than fail to try, even on things of that nature, because the more synergy we can bring, and the more awareness, but I think the better word is confidence. You know, I mean, Johnny, if you make a charitable donation and you say, okay, I'm giving this 50 quid, how was that for you?
I love it. I love it.
Quid?
It feels like I'm down the pub.
Did you feel it? Did you feel it?
Yeah.
I'm giving this 50 quid to help these soldiers on the front. And there's no better satisfaction than knowing your 50 quid went to where you intended to donate it.
Well, hear this out, mate. So this is Natho Kepi Blancafella, sorry. The Greg Terry Experience is probably the most trusted organization I have donated to. Although there are so many that urgently need assistance, and there are so many good ones out there. It's not to decry very many, but it's hard to sit and watch what's happening. And so therefore, you know, Greg Terry Experience and what we're trying to do here is, I think, as good an organization as any, and better than many, actually.
We just came. We're very close here, guys, where we're at right now, and we just came through a very serious block point. And when the soldier responsible for the black point, when you roll up, and Johnny, you've had this experience, our window rolled down, he looked at us, Zhenya talked to him for about 5 seconds, and he looked at me and goes, oh, I know you guys. Get in there and help them. I mean,
yeah, brilliant.
It's a good feeling for us knowing that they are happy we're here to help, because to be honest, a lot of the Ukrainian volunteers that were doing this for the first 12 to 18 months of the war are they're now on the zero line. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to say, AJ Simo is given to both my channel and yours, so thank you, AJ. He's a great supporter of certainly my channel and also here indeed Greg Terry. So thanks for that, mate. And also Aussie T, great supporter of many good channels, gifted 5 ATP memberships. So that's really, really kind. And is this another one from Blue Wolf here? Or thanks for talking about my comment. Love to Pete. Thanks for all you do. Slava Ukraini.
Slava.
Some Czech love there. So that's really kind. And the last one, just before we go on to other things. So Rick from the Netherlands, by the looks of it, thank you for your super sticker. That's really very generous. Indeed, I need to get together a thanks to Richard Bennett for gifting memberships. I accidentally pressed that.
I see a comment, and I'm watching the chat so I can try to keep up with folks, because I just feel responsible to talk to people. I like it. Greg, it's on your channel, Viggo Holmson. If you're already in cooperation with English Charities, could you post the name of those so people can donate assist? So what I can tell you about that is our nonprofit in the United States has a mother nonprofit, and the mother nonprofit has branches in the UK. So I know we have. Okay, I know we have nonprofit there. I just need to do some research on it. And we'll keep you updated on that.
Because what you'd want to happen, obviously, is to make sure that whatever money goes to that entity in the UK goes directly to Ukraine and isn't involved in the kind of charitable activities of that entity in the UK as a whatever entity it is. Do you know what I mean? So I think
exactly.
people want to make sure that if money went to there, that was ring fenced for Ukraine.
100%. 100%. We measure twice and cut once.
Yeah. So any other news that you have had access to that would be useful for viewers to know about? Any other anything to do with more aid and types of aid?
No, I think this is where we're at up to the moment. I know there's some other things you want to chat about. How much longer are you going to be live? Are you planning for?
I would just whisk through my military aid stuff.
I'll stay right here with you. Do your thing, and maybe something will ding up. Let's just do it together.
Okay, and you can chime in if there's anything that
Yeah,
you feel
exactly.
worthy of saying.
Well,
So
I want to listen.
yeah, so this is from Annalena Baerbock, who's a German foreign minister. I said this before in my previous video, but it's pertinent to military aid. As terrible as it may be, Putin does not want negotiations. Anyone who claims that arms supplies only prolong the war is playing into Putin's hands, because to say that the West is preventing Ukraine from negotiating is a lie. So this is the idea that we need to give aid to Ukraine, and it's not going to prolong the war. It will, in fact, expedite an end to the war, and it's exactly what they need, especially given the idea that Putin is not interested in negotiating. Half of the weapons are not delivered to Ukraine on time. So this is a really interesting sort of, I think this is part of the panel with Rustem Umerov, the defense minister. Also, we had Commission, top-notch guy who's a strategic minister. The idea is that things are not getting to Ukraine on time. There are blockades at the border. The Polish farmers are causing issues, but also things are just not being delivered in a timely fashion. So he said, so we are losing people and territories, exactly what Greg's just been saying. You know,
so we've talked about that today specifically with Umarov, and that is 100% accurate, of course. And this is not spun. This is not some propaganda coming out. This is the truth. So even the things that were supposed to be here, let's say on X date, and it's not about a new supply coming from the U.S. or a new bill being passed or a new aid package or anything from the EU. The things that were already in the pipeline that are still supposed to be trickling are even late.
Yeah. Did you say? You intimated that you've spoken to Umarov?
No, I've not spoken to Umarov. But we were discussing Umarov today,
right.
And what I can confirm is this is accurate.
Yeah. So other things that he said is work is underway to identify corruption schemes in the defense forces. That's a consistent thing that's happening. There is not corruption, although you could argue that is, but you know, doing things about it. There is coordination on the equipment of fortification structures. This is what Greg was talking about earlier. Several thousand support points are ready. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the Russian Federation has fired more than 8,000 missiles into Ukraine. Right. Now, interestingly, about the fortifications, Greg said something interesting to me before the video started, which was this idea that Zelensky's this kind of crazy, amazing hero, and people love him, and I really like him, but I'm always trying to question why I like him. Do I like him because he seems like a good guy, or do I like him because of things he's done? How do I know exactly what he's done? What's going on behind the scenes? Anyway, there seems to be this push to get fortifications built that was not happening when Zelensky was in charge. And one of the criticisms, I heard this from Ukraine the latest, and their Daily Telegraph reporters, and from Kiev Independent, Francis Farrell reporter, who's been talking about and also saying that not enough people are talking about this, that the fortifications were not built, and in fact Ukraine was caught sort of off guard with regard to not having fortifications built. Well, that has to be at some point the responsibility of who was the commander-in-chief before Syrskyi, and now Syrskyi appears to be doing things about it. Is this something that can be leveled at Zelensky? I don't know.
Well, I really like Zelensky too. I think he's a good man. I think he's honorable, and I like a lot of the Ukrainians. But the fact is, the facts are the facts, and defense lines were not built. Wherever that fault lies, you know, right now, as we were talking earlier, I think you said it even was coming out yesterday, and we were discussing it today. I think Ukraine is trying to get the right people into the right positions, and and sometimes the world just assumes oh, that was a bad guy, he got fired, whatever. That's not always the truth. Sometimes you just don't have the right people in the right positions, no matter how they talk or what they look like or anything. And like right now, the guy responsible, and this is public, you already know about it, the guy responsible for the Air Force here in Ukraine is honestly not qualified, and he's just not qualified. And
Do you mean the spokesman, not Yuri Ignat, but the actual Air Force commander?
here, Jane, you can talk.
One more time, sorry.
Air Force not being the Air Force, the guy responsible for the Air Force not qualified for, it's already public, F-16s.
Okay. I would say it like this: there is teams, and I believe with the sometimes with the outside pressure. Yes, like that. Our teams, our commanders and ministers will make it. This is how I see it. There is, I don't want, to tell, too much in here. Sorry. Like there is, yes, everything is in public, but some topics are. Quite sensible too. sensitive,
So
sensitive
yeah,
too.
well, I reported yesterday that, and Greg confirmed this to me again, talking before the video, that it's true that the infrastructure is not in place for the F-16s, and that's the challenge. It's not the F-16s themselves, it's not necessarily the training, but the
Yes.
infrastructure. And I was wondering whether that's maintenance teams, whether that's this or that, but it appears to be the air bases, maybe the runways. It could be, I don't know, I'm completely guessing here, guys, but it could be where you keep the F-16s safe. So can they put them in hangars or underground in ways that they can't get hit by missiles? So I don't know, that it could be that's
Yes, there is a problem with in it, but a much bigger problem. It's just consequences of what we have during the previous years. Since 2014 and even before, Russia were preparing, they were doing, and that's sad, but they had some influence on our army as well. This is why in air forces there were a problem, and there were the destruction process the years before. That's sad, but we now it's rebuilding it, and I think we will see. And yes, it's challenging, but
we do our best.
we do our best. Yes, this is why
absolutely.
there is the pressure inside and outside, and it's important. I think it's just a logical moment we need to go through.
Yeah.
There is a lot of questions. I will not lay it all in here, but yes, we're in the middle of war. That's it.
Yeah. Thanks to Stupidity in Essence, I'm happy that you are providing all this great information. Thanks for your great work. Thank you, mate. Thanks for your Danish love. Appreciate that. The failure to supply shells, failure in the supply of shells to Ukraine has split the EU. And Greg and I have already talked about this. So France, Cyprus and Greece. So France wants it to be done within the EU. Cyprus and Greece don't want to be buying stuff off Turkey on behalf of the EU to buy stuff off Turkey, because their money then goes towards the EU money that then buys from Turkey. And Turkey are the kind of mortal enemies of Greece and Cyprus, or at least half of Cyprus. The countries that delivered cruise missiles to Ukraine are unhappy that Germany is not supplying Taurus. So that's interesting. This is coming from a Bloomberg article. So that would be the UK and France being unhappy that, hey, we provided these cruise missiles. Taurus needs to be provided, but Germany aren't doing that. There's always so much talk about the Taurus from Germany. Then it's
for the last 18 months.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah.
I do. Yeah. The arguments to me don't really add up enough. So if it's the fact that Taurus can fly further, then that's just a matter of range. And actually, that's, you've moved from M777s to Storm Shadows, so there's your range change already. Just adding another couple of hundred is not a category difference, we say in philosophy. It's not a category difference. It's just a matter of this over that.
Johnny, even if the Tauruses were here right now, and F-16s were gonna be here in 2 months, and because everything I'm hearing now is the earliest, they could arrive, but it will not be before September now due to other extenuating circumstances, and all of that would be great. But if these guys do not get 155 millimeter shells where they can defend that line. And I know all these other things will help, but if they do not get artillery, those things will only be X amount of helpful, whatever X is.
And I mean, the good news is that the EU will transfer. So there was talk about, oh, the EU failed to get 1 million by the end of March, and it looked like they're only going to have 500,000 or so, or sometimes 600,000. I don't know what the figures are, but apparently another 170,000 will reach Ukraine by the end of March. Obviously, that's almost like the most important thing that we'll talk about today. If that happens, and if they can fulfill that, then that will be a huge help. That's according to Dmitry Kuleba, who's a Ukrainian foreign minister, speaking to Joseph Borrell. So fingers crossed that that's going to happen. I did a video yesterday about the difference between Ukraine and Russia going forward. Russia at the moment is making stuff at maximum. I think they haven't got too much headroom to expand. And so my most optimistic position is this. Things will, like, forget the front lines, just talk about economies and production, right? Front lines, there might be some shifts. Ukraine might lose a whole load of land in the next couple of months. But in terms of going forward, Ukraine's production capabilities and capacities inside Ukraine and with European and American help is only going up, and actually is going up in fairly significant ways, although you might not see that for like 6 months or a year. Russia is rating at max or amount of headroom to push that even further, and they will need to depend on places like China and stuff to help them. So my most optimistic is that this the worst Ukraine will be at the moment, and everything going forward will be better in terms of the production and procurement of shells.
Okay, so let me throw one
spanner into the work.
Let me throw that. I don't disagree with anything you just said, but there's one piece of the equation we have to think about. And I can tell you today, I asked a direct question straight away. And that was the quality of the Ukrainian soldiers that we have on the zero now, fighting on the front lines for 1,000 kilometers compared to and this is not a personal attack, but just training wise, the quality of soldiers that we had there 12 months ago. Is there a difference? And I was point blank told to my face, it's not even close. And it's not about these guys. The training was not available. The time required for training was not available. And we've lost a lot of these powerful heroes that have so much influence over the younger soldiers or the less experienced. So that's an issue. Secondly, if the mobilization is not figured out and the ability to train is not figured out, let's say we have an increase in stuff coming, but we have a deficit in bodies, in soldiers. Okay, we can get stuff here, but we can't create soldiers out of the air. And Ukrainians are kind people. Ukrainians value life. And the population of Ukraine versus Russia is, significantly different. And Russia is already on the war economy. So the reality is it's the Soviet way. They'll just keep pushing guys in and sacrifice them. And that's their strategy. Ukraine doesn't have, that's not their modus operandi. And secondly, they don't have the guys.
And the first point you made about the dilution of skills over time, which is happening just as much to the Russians. But
Yes,
the problem is the Russians just have way more. They don't. It almost is immaterial to them, because they'll just send, at least at the moment, they'll just send inexperienced people, but they can still do the job of taking ground, give them a gun, send them forward. If you die, we give it to the next guy. So
not only that, you're continuing to deplete the supply of munition that Ukraine does have. I mean, it's a challenge right now.
as Michael Weiss says, the 170,000 from Europe to Ukraine within a month will be really good, but they do need 200,000 rounds per month to retain localized fire superiority, according to Estonia. So Estonia have done a report on this. Part of their report they established a few weeks ago. I think that's probably the same report that states that if we all put 0.25% of GDP towards Ukraine's war effort, then we'd absolutely trounce Russia. But are we prepared to do that? Ukraine is set to receive the first tranche of 4.5 billion euros. That's the 50 billion euro package. It's the first part of that, should take place in March. And obviously that's going to be super useful for Ukraine to get hold of that money. I don't know how much money will go towards, how much of that is military, ring fenced to the military, how much is just general. I don't know the details there. It would be great if that was entirely military, and it'd be great. And lots of people have asked me this. I don't know if you have the answer to this, Greg. So many people say, why, with the US not supplying stuff to Ukraine and the impasse in Congress, why can't the EU take this money and spend it on American weaponry? Like, if the Americans do have it sat in warehouses and are not giving it to Ukraine because of the impasse, then can Europe buy it off the US? I don't know.
I do not know the answer to that right now, but what I do know the answer to is our nation is completely divided. Our nation is in chaos. And right now, there is just a massive internal conflict in our own nation that makes it a challenge to do what is proper and right in regard to Ukraine. There is a massive fear of Donald Trump in the Republican sector, and we have a mess. That's all I can say.
Yeah, Austin
I'm
Chapman
sorry
said,
about that.
I received a non-partisan response from 2 of 3 Republican US representatives regarding Ukraine aid. So well done. Please do that. And if a Republican does do so, recently Republican lawmaker Gallagher has come out very much in favor of Ukraine. Tell him that's awesome. You know, write to him or email him or tweet him and say, thanks for supporting Ukraine, because it's about not just hammering those who aren't doing things, but congratulating those who are and putting their necks out, especially if they're in the Republican Party doing that. So that's really good. And for Greg's own channel here, gifted 5 Greg Terry memberships. That's Paul Gouda Deberitz, who's always really generous. And Nafo Kepi Blancfella as well, gifting memberships.
Nafo. And I need to do a shout out as well. We'll go ahead and get Ronnie Vrinken. I'm going to call you out right now, my buddy from Belgium. I even know what country you're from. This brain doesn't forget typically. And thank you for your support. I don't know why that's not working, but it should be working. But buddy, love you, Ronnie Vrinken.
Yeah, he's a good man.
He's
and
a phenomenal guy.
Said something about Belgium today, about frozen assets in Belgium, and gave a hint that things are looking good on frozen assets. And because a lot of the Russian frozen assets, weirdly, are in Belgium's like sphere of influence. So they are responsible for an awful lot of those frozen assets. And if there's good news on that coming out, then that is really very good. Just finally, before we go on to some more news, Daniel Weslund from Sweden, thank you. Great work, both of you. Here's money from Sweden for stuff. I am due to give Greg another dollop of my own kind of aid and stuff. So that will go contribute towards that. So thank you.
Can somebody give me an interpretation of dollop?
Just a big dollop of ice cream, you know, big dollop of gravy.
I'm just messing with
big
you.
dollop of aid. So going to the key independent. And Swedish Defence Minister Per Jonsson are meeting. They met yesterday and discussed the prospects of joint weapons production. Again, this is the importance of what's going on with the joint with international manufacturers. This is so important. So when I say it's looking good for Ukraine going forward, it's exactly this kind of thing. So if Swedish manufacturers are coming and setting up in Ukraine, then that's something that isn't happening in Russia. I mean, honestly speaking, every time something like that happens, you have to think, is this happening in Russia? And the answer is no. And that's what but it's long term. I mean, that's going to be a year down the line before anything's going to be built or whatever. So, but it's good news for the long term sustainability of Ukraine's war efforts. Production defense and future negotiations for signing a bilateral security agreement, according to Zelensky's office. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has called on the transfer of frozen assets. So that's what we talked about, frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. Quote, first, we must send the billions of dollars in profits that these assets generate to Ukraine. Agreed. And then together with our G7 partners, we should come up with legal ways to confiscate those assets themselves and send them to Ukraine. Agreed. According to Sunak, confiscation is a way to hold the Russian state accountable. Agreed. And the British Prime Minister urged the West to be bolder in helping Ukraine in other ways as well, by giving it more long-range weapons. Agreed. Taurus. Drones and ammunition. Agreed. Everyone. And by undermining Russia's economic ability to wage war. I also think in that Times article that's quoting from, he was also putting pressure on the US to give more stuff. But interestingly, when you see the US and UK support as a percentage of GDP, like as a percentage of how big our economies are, at the bottom of the list, like the UK aren't as bad, but it's interesting. The US is at 0.3%, which is like way below sort of these much smaller nations, but smaller economies giving a larger percentage of their economy is not as good as the US giving a small percentage, but of a massive economy and a huge armed forces as well. So it swings and roundabouts, different ways you can slice and dice the stats. Okay. Additionally, the UK MOD, Ministry of Defence, signed a series of contracts with the English defence manufacturer Cook Defence Systems to produce hundreds of new tracks for UK armoured vehicles. Again, do international defence manufacturers help Russia in the same way? I don't think so. So that's good news. Moving on, the production of drones has increased 100 times. Prime Minister Shmyhal Umarov said that 50% of the web deliveries are late, which is why we lose the people we. Now, the idea that drone production has increased 100 times, then you've got commission top-notch guys saying Ukraine's capabilities for 2024 are 6 times higher than 2023. Now, how does that marry 100 times to 6 times? If I'm being charitable, it could be that since the beginning of the war, it's increased 100 times. But since 2023, 2024 will increase 6 times, which is built on 2023 increasing on 2022, maybe 15 times. And that gives you over 100, gives you about 100 times. So either way, each year, Ukraine is upping their production of drones. He says the capabilities of 2024 are 6 times higher than they were in 2023. And 2024 is going to be a big year. Well, he continues that Ukraine is to ramp up production of ground systems, the UGVs, unmanned ground vehicles. And Greg has seen, he's ridden on a UGV. I was there with him riding on a UGV, weren't you, Greg?
Yes, I was.
And I'm going to be riding
on it again.
So the minister said that the massive production of aerial and sea drones has already been organized, and now the next goal is to make the same with the autonomous ground systems too. And you know, the charity that you guys are helping to support with what Greg and Jen are doing will help to deliver some of those vehicles to frontline troops. The Minister of Digital Transformation, Mikhailo Fedorov, has confirmed that Ukrainian troops are able to remotely control drones, not only close to the front, but also from the rear. Quote, it already works. Only now the product line is expanding. Today, technology allows it to be done, but it is not about all types of UAVs or platforms in general. And it is not about mass application, but I think it is a matter of time. I'm not quite sure the English there, but basically they are doing things with drones, with ground drones as well, that operate both at front line, but also behind the front line. You've also got demining, autonomous demining drones, lots of things that can help. And technology, this is what Zelensky was talking about really leading on the technology front. And then to go back to your top-notch man, the most important program is the missile program. We have a long-range weapon that can hit targets at a distance of 700 kilometers, he said. Again, this is in light of Zelensky saying Western long-range weapons are not to be used outside of Ukraine. So he's promised, and I think this is to try and get Taurus given and other such ATACMs and whatnot. We promise we won't use them out Ukraine into Russian territory. Ukraine will use its own weapons on targets outside of Ukraine's occupied territories. So that's important that then you've got commissions saying we have 700-kilometer missile capability. I can't wait to see these produced at scale and to see these used. I don't know if you got anything to say about that, Greg.
No, I you know, as I watch you go through all of this, I'm actually enjoying it, of course. Not only your accent, but the information. But it just pushes me to start thinking a different way. And this is a philosophical question, Johnny. And I don't want to interrupt you now. And I know, but when
It's
I
only a
see
few.
you
We go.
when I see you clicking through all of that, my brain is doing this. Holy moly, we're in a divided world. Holy moly, all these relationships that are being developed between Ukraine and the EU and the United States, and is growing more and more and more. And we see the relationship. I was watching the chat, well, Iran supplying this. We know the North Korea relationship. We know India is basically filling Russian coffers with money through the purchase of oil and gas, and the China equation and the war in the Middle East. I'm just sitting here philosophically thinking, this world is split right in half.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
and actually, we'll come on to mention this in a second.
And that's why this war needs to be ended. That's why it needs to be won and ended. And because the longer this goes on, the more divided the world will become.
Yeah. Agreed. So the UK intelligence update says Russia has originally deployed approximately 130 battalion tactical groups. Remember those BTGs from the beginning of the war for its in Ukraine. This likely included approximately 1,300 tanks and 5,000 infantry fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers and at least 100,000 personnel. In 2 years of conflict, Russia's losses match, and in many cases, those that compromise its original force. Confirmed Russian losses include over 2,700 tanks and 5,000 IFVs and APCs. Russia's killed and wounded are likely approximately 350,000. That's interesting from the UK government saying that, or UK agents. We can talk about that is killed and wounded. But mobilization and recruitment, production and refurbishment of existing stockpiles means that losses have been replaced, and Russian forces in Ukraine are now larger in number than at the start of the war. It's now able to maintain attacks along the front line and pursue a strategy of attrition against Ukrainian forces. Now, I would argue that the forces they do have in terms of personnel and vehicles are less, the quality less than it was at the beginning of the war. But that's the same. That's the same in terms of personnel for the Ukrainians. I think they've got better equipment, maybe more of it, because they're getting more modern equipment from Western sources. But Russians are able to, at the moment, keep up with their losses and indeed increase the size. Now, talking about North Korea and
one
Iran,
interjection there.
Sorry, carry on.
One interjection there.
Yeah.
So, am I, because I like that British intelligence source. Is that saying that Russia has losses of 350,000 wounded and lost? Is that what that's saying?
That is what they're saying. Yeah, that's saying,
Okay.
which is only
Okay.
50,000 off the Ukrainian general staff figures.
Okay, so for me, I think that's more accurate because, guys, just remember all the propaganda coming from all over the world, even 6 months ago. Oh, they've lost 500,000 soldiers. They've lost XXX. I think we're finally getting some real numbers and reality here. From what I talk to people here inside Ukraine, I think that's really accurate. Really accurate.
Yeah, and there was another in my lost video today. I said a bunch of journalists have got together and reckon there's about, I can't remember what it was, 85,000 killed. So that's what they reckon kills are, which is interesting. Now, talking about North Korea and Iran, September 23, North Korea has delivered more than 10,000 containers with military cargo to Russia. US State Department. This is freaking worrying, right? In particular, more than 7,400 containers of ammunition-related materials were delivered to Russia through the Stevedoring Company LLC in the port of Vostochny. Despite the unscrupulous allies of the aggressor country, we continue to donate to our soldiers. Now, as always, they really need our support. Yes, but my goodness, the North Koreans have come to the help of Russia, and Russia would possibly be in quite a different situation now had they not been given literally millions of artillery shells by the North Koreans. Now, there's this talk, as was hinted by Greg, about the other day, Reuters came out with a newspaper article saying 400 Iranian missiles have been given to, ballistic missiles have been given to Russia. Now, Budanov has come out, and I know sometimes Budanov speaks, you think out of turn, Greg, but Budanov denied this. Really interesting. I don't know what to believe. Now, he's denied that Iran has supplied Russia with missiles, as well as the fact that Russian Federation is massively using North Korean missiles to attack Ukraine. Quote, there are no missiles in Russia and only a few North Korean missiles, that's not North Korean ammunition, artillery ammunition, that's missiles, that were used for strikes. It's not large scale. So that is putting paid to some of these claims that Iran has given 400 and North Korea given loads. They've given a few missiles and Iran not at the moment. So I don't know what to think about that.
Well, I can tell you this, Budanov's respected here, and he's like, but I'm gonna tell you, it aggravates me with half the things he says. And so many times, I mean, even 18 months ago, we're going to have Crimea by April. We're going to have this by June. Russia's running out of supply. For me, I respect him, but I don't listen to anything he says anymore, personally.
Yeah, fair
I'll
enough.
tell you this. I'll tell you this. Today with the group I was talking to,
tell me,
they were sitting there, and you know who I was talking to. They were sitting there going, man, South Korea could supply. South Korea's loaded. South Korea could supply Ukraine.
I know.
And
it frustrates me.
Listen here. Now so this was my response. This is why Rocket Boy keeps shooting rockets off every once in a while. Putin's buddy over there landing in the Sea of Japan, because it just keeps the pressure. It's just logical, guys. It's not complicated.
That's a great. Greg's the thinking man, so that's pretty clever, isn't it? So keep the South Koreans on their toes so they don't give overly to Ukraine. Yeah. Interesting. And then finally for this, oh brilliant, it's oh yeah, here we go. Dozens of Russian T-62s at the railway station in Yevpatoria and Crimea. So the Russians are still, I think, getting out their old tanks, their old self-propelled guns, their old howitzers. They're able to refurbish these. The question is, I mean, these might not be refurbished. These could be fixed up, damaged ones from the front line. So I just don't know. But the question is always, how long can those stockpiles inside Russia last? They are eating through the howitzer stockpiles for sure. There's been satellite imagery to suggest that. The question is, the ones that are left, are they able to be cannibalized still? What's the long-term prognosis for the Russians in terms of what they can do? Because at some point they are going to be relying on having to build new stuff, and that could be where Russia comes into trouble. If their manufacturing industries are able to refurbish but not able to really build from scratch, the numbers that they're losing, that's when you having a bit of an advantage. I just wanted to, as Greg's on the line, because Greg did read this. There's 102 comments. I need to go and look at them. This is an article I recently wrote called "Crosshairs: A Christian Fighter in Ukraine and the Question of God in War."
No, it's just when you put Christian in the title, you're going to get a lot more views, Johnny. When you put Christian in the title, you're going to get a lot more views from your background. Gotcha,
yeah, buddy. but so this is written as a liberal atheist. I spoke to many Christians in Ukraine. It's a fairly religious country. But it's interesting for me as a philosopher, what are the justifications for war? What's the justification for, defending your homeland? Obviously, there's going to be several areas where I would do exactly the same as a Christian person and use the same justification. What is specific to someone who believes? Anyway, I wrote an article that I hope, the intention was not to write an article where I would say what the guy said and then critique that justification, because he didn't have the ability to come back at me, right? So this wasn't a kind of a philosophical exercise, me having a go at someone's justification, but this is trying to understand someone from a very different worldview and give them the chance to express themselves, and then during the article look at commonalities between me and them, and not a way of trying to drive in differences. And hopefully I did that in the article. Greg read it and seemed to, you weren't offended by this in any way. So hopefully
Johnny, not only was I not offended, I loved that article, buddy. I think it was fair. It was beautifully written. It was descriptive. And for everybody on my channel right now and everybody on your channel, you need to read that article right there. And if you guys are not reading Johnny Pierce's writings, you're missing out on something special. I may not agree with everything he says, but I know one thing: the man works his rear end off, and the man is fair in his perception, his understandings, and we're on opposite sides on many things, but on the main things, we're smack dab together. And I'm going to tell you something: I love reading Johnny's stuff.
Thanks, mate. It really does mean an awful lot, actually. The ones pertaining to war recently, Curse on by Night on the front lines of two worlds. I really enjoyed writing that article.
I
Just
enjoyed
like
reading it.
the structure of that, and crowdfunding a war against autocracy as well. That was, all of these are from my experience out there. I don't know where I'm going to go to next with writing an article on Ukraine. Certainly, I appreciate any feedback on those. The other thing I'm going to say is that on all of my descriptions, particularly to my losses videos, there is Dell's stats, and he looks at the general stuff, statistics that are produced every day, and he's got a free open source data set where an Excel spreadsheet where he looks at all the data points and then has put it together, and we can look at that. And every so often I delve into this to do a video on that. Well, now someone else has also popped up who does coding and websites, and he's produced a Russian loss statistic. Again, it does depend on the general staff figures being accurate, but given the general staff figures and whatever you think about them, here's a really nice daily appraisal, but it also gives you the averages, so you can compare the dailies to averages and see, well, actually this was a bad day for artillery, good day for this, whatever. Anyway, that's a really good thing. And he says he's just contacted me to say that he's going to develop this and put more stuff on it. So both of those
Johnny,
links to both of these.
Can you send me that link?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, not now.
I'll
later,
put it
later.
on the chat here. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think that's another really useful thing, and that's from Bill. So
Awesome.
both Dell and Bill doing great work, and I just absolutely freaking love the fact that people come together to do things that are. I've just sent that to you on WhatsApp, mate.
Yeah, I got
people come together and do this for the good of for the good of Ukraine, hopefully, and for the good of the information spaces that we all inhabit. So really appreciate Dell and Bill here for the work they've done. Fantastic. And that's done. I'm going to just give some thanks to some super chats, if I may.
Do it,
Greg.
Do it.
Yeah, do it. So just thank you so much. I think I've said that of those people. Thank you to, this is one of Greg's ones here, Tara Mama Big English. Super sticker.
Thank you, Tara Mama Big English.
Paul Gilbert, again, so generous with ATP memberships there. Johnny Christensen, from one Johnny to another, my friend. Hey, JP, split it with Greg. Johnny from Land. That's really cool, Johnny. Thank you so much for your help. As I said, I'm due to give Greg some. I think I might be. I'd never know what to donate towards. Yeah, I never know what to do, whether to do it for specifically for drones or just say, here's a big pot, mate, and you can spend it on what you like. So we'll talk about that.
Whatever. Listen, it all goes to the guys. But I do need to say this because it's not going to come up in your chat. I saw a chat message because Zhenya's got me all set up here. We are mobile. I've been streaming to you out of a truck. We're rolling. So I saw Stephen Chapman donated $100 via, I think it was PayPal. So thank you, Stephen.
Brilliant, Stephen. No, that's absolutely amazing. And thank you to Chris Jones, who says, great work and reporting, JP and Greg. Good to hear news direct from the front. All the best. Take care. Stay safe. And I really do appreciate that. I really appreciate that Greg's done this co-stream, because actually hearing stuff from the front is really valuable. Hearing rumors from people speaking and the news, not just bona fide news, but also rumors, and getting that whole holistic information from Ukraine, I think is important for us. Mark Bisque, who's just the legend of support.
Mhm.
And that's Mark and Olena. We visited Olena's parents in Snehurivka. I can't stop thinking about how different this war would look like and how many lives would have been saved had US aid not been interrupted. It's enraging. Please share with our new friends, Greg and Zhenya. Lovely. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
I will do. I completely agree. I am so frustrated on a continued basis about what's happening, because what's really frustrating is that, to be honest, if that bill went through the House of Representatives at the moment, apparently there is enough votes. There are enough votes, sorry, for that to go through, for that bill to go through. And so the fact that it isn't is just really, really annoying. Like I can't tell you how annoying that is for me.
Johnny,
you know, there are the votes there. There are the votes there. It's only Mike Johnson that's not doing it.
Johnny,
Yes.
you hear me? Two things. If you can look in the
Yes, I
chat
can.
right there and see mine and grab Sergey. It'll say CEP.
Yeah.
Okay, put that up.
Sorry, I need to go down the bottom.
Uh-huh.
So you've got who's it from? Sorry.
Sergey. CEP. Well, goofy letter I, goof backwards N. I'm trying to give you letters.
Yep, this one.
Yes. Привіт, друзі. Hello, friends. Slava Ukraini. Героям слава. Slava Bogu za vas, bratushki. So that is hello, friends. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes, and glory to God for all of the brothers. That is fish on the front.
Fish, my friend. This is not far from me. I hope Fish is still listening. This is made out of, I think, a 152 mil Russian Soviet shell, a Soviet era shell, and it says to Johnny Pierce, and it's got the Ukrainian trident on. It says from Fish with Ukraine in my heart. So that is a beautiful thing that Fish did, and thanks for Greg and Zhenya for facilitating that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, JP.
And just finally, two more. So thank you to Rick again. I apologize for Wilders. That's Geert Wilders, who is wanting to stop the Netherlands doing a security agreement with Ukraine. So Geert Wilders is kind of a Trump equivalent hair-wise. He's a populist leader. He's a right-wing anti-immigration guy, but he's also, say what you like about all those other things, but he's looking to be a little bit anti-Ukraine, perfectly in line with what Russia is trying to do in stoking those sympathies inside Europe. And Geert Wilders is another one of these guys. So majority, though, in the Netherlands is for support, and Netherlands are a superb supporter of Ukraine. That's absolutely true. And Tanya Rindenko from Canada, and so nice to see people getting together. Hoth. I'm not sure what Hoth means, whether that's anything to do with Star Wars and a Hoth system and fighting in the snow, or whether that's something to do with Ukraine. Probably the latter. I don't think there's a Star Wars reference being made there. Or it might stand for something, HOTH, who knows. Right. Thank you so much to the live chat. I haven't been able to read much of it, so I do apologize, but thank you to Greg and Zhenya. Is there anything you guys want to say going forward?
Well, I see a chat there from Jason Thomas. No, I did not see Jake Bro's stream, but I will check it out. Thank you. And I just say thank you, everybody. Here's Zhenya.
Дякую. Thank you very much to all of you.
Дякую. Mikey from Cambridge just donated £30 via PayPal. Thanks, guys, legends. Really appreciate all of your support in all the different ways. Mikey from Cambridge is an absolute ledge. Look, it's such a privilege to be able to talk to Greg and Zhenya. Really, they're wonderful people, wonderful human beings. I can vouch for that firsthand. It's not just what you see on YouTube. They are like that in real life. and you know, thank you for all they do on a continued basis for Ukraine. So if you guys don't know where to donate your money in terms of charity, then where have you been for the last however long? It's definitely worth your while putting a few pence to Greg and Zhenya and what they are doing out there, and you can find the details under both of our descriptions, both of our videos. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, JP. This was good. And guys, you know, so many of you send comments all the time. You like how Johnny and I interact. It's like opposites coming together, and we've made a commitment to do, you know, at least this once a week, if not more. Brody Walker, thank you for gifting the memberships there. And yeah, so this is beautiful. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Look, take care, everybody. Take care, Greg and Jenny. Stay safe, my friends, and
night,
keep doing the
everybody.
wonderful work you're doing. Good night, y'all.
We're gonna go climb under our rock and stay safe.
You do that, man.
All right. Good night.
Ta-da.
Bye-bye.